Touch the Leg, welcome to Tibet This Week, a weekly feature that provides a preview of this week's news on Tibet, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Central Tibetan Administration. Let's have a look at today's headlines. His Holiness the Dalai Lama successfully concludes visit to South India. Sikyong Dr. Lobsang Sangay's Japan visit is underway. Taipei International Book Exhibition features Tibet. United Nations Human Rights Council President assures doors of Human Rights Council are open to all. His Holiness the Dalai Lama returned to Dharamshala on Monday this week after a 10-day successful visit to South Indian cities of Hyderabad and Amravati and the Indian capital, New Delhi. At the invitation of Swami Vivekananda International Foundation, His Holiness spoke on the relevance of ancient Indian thought in today's world. On Friday last week, His Holiness inaugurated the first National Women's Parliament 2017 along with the Honorable Chief Minister of the state, Shri Chandrababu Naidu. At the inaugural ceremony, His Holiness the Dalai Lama addressed the need to encourage more women leaders in all spectrums of work and community building exercise and advocated women's role in promoting compassionate leadership. The 81-year-old Buddhist leader said his mother was his first teacher who taught him practice of compassion and love.
My own sort of experience, my first teacher about practice of compassion is my mother. My mother never showed angry face, always love. So, the first teacher of my practice of love from my mother.
The Tibetan spiritual leader paid homage to Indian Police Service martyrs during his visit to Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel's National Police Academy in Hyderabad last Saturday. While interacting with about 200 police officers at the academy, His Holiness the Dalai Lama spoke of the role of police in protection of democracy in the country and called them to delegate their responsibility with honesty and transparency. On Sunday, His Holiness laid the historic foundation stone for new South Asia hub for the Dalai Lama Center for Ethics and Transformative Values and gave a talk on ethics, values and well-being. Addressing a rapt audience of intellectuals and professionals, His Holiness said that one of his dreams was creation of union of the whole world.
Then eventually Asia, two giant sort of Asian country, China and India. And then technologically, Japan, most industrialized democratic Asian country. And then of course Bangladesh or these countries eventually create some kind of union. Then my dream, of course, we will not achieve or materialize within this century. I think to the second century, third century, eventually, I think should create union of world. Then world can be demilitarized world.
The Office of Tibet Taiwan took part in Taipei International Book Exhibition 2017 and featured books on Tibet published by Snowland Publications. Representative Dawat Siring, Office of Tibet Taiwan, along with the director of Snowland Publications and the chief editor of Sky Above Tibet, a quarterly magazine published by Office of Tibet, inaugurated two new books on Tibet in Chinese, Finding Common Ground and A Pictorial History of Tibet. The exhibition, which ran through 15th February, has attracted 621 publishers from 59 countries this year. Members of Japanese Parliament, including advisors to Japanese government agencies and Committee on Foreign Relations, welcomed the Tibetan political leader Sikyong Dr. Lobsang Sangay at the Parliament of Japan in Tokyo this Tuesday. Addressing the members of parliament, Sikyong lauded the establishment of Japanese Parliamentary Support Group for Tibet, consisting of 87 members of parliament, and said that the group sends a very powerful message of hope and encouragement to the Tibetans inside Tibet.
In resolving the Tibet issue.
On Sunday last week, during a public talk held in Tokyo, attended by over 300 people, including writers, journalists, and Tibetan supporters, Sikyong spoke on the way forward to resolve the problem of Tibet and urged the Japanese government to support middle way approach. On Monday, Sikyong addressed prominent leaders and journalists at the Foreign Correspondent Club of Japan in Tokyo and mentioned his hopes for continued support from the United States government for dialogue between His Holiness the Dalai Lama's envoys and the Chinese government for the middle way approach and to resolve Tibet issue.
Genuine autonomy within China and within the framework of the Chinese constitution.
A 4-member delegation from Department of Information and International Relations, who led the Tibet at the United Nations campaign in Geneva, met with the United Nations Human Rights Council President Joaquin Alexander Maza Martelli, permanent representative of El Salvador, to the United Nations last week. President Joaquin ensured that his office is committed to protecting human rights around the world and the doors of the Human Rights Council are open to all. The delegation carried out an intensive week-long lobbying of over scores of United Nations permanent missions, the United Nations Human Rights Council members, Office of United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, and United Nations Special Procedures mandate holders. Secretary Sonam Nobu Thakpo said,
"The Department of Information and International Relations has initiated the UN advocacy walk to keep the grim human rights situation in Tibet on the UN human rights agenda and discuss Tibet at the forthcoming 34th UN Human Rights Council session this month. It is also aimed to discuss the human rights situation in Tibet at the 3rd cycle of China's Universal Periodic Review due in November next year."
Tibet was ranked as the 2nd worst of the worst in Freedom House annual Freedom in the World 2016 report, with only Syria scoring lower. In view of the deteriorating human rights situation inside Tibet and China's violation of international human rights law, 4 pertinent and pressing human rights issues were raised during the week-long lobbying: crackdown on human rights defenders, religious repression in Tibet, enforced and involuntary disappearance, and monitoring and surveillance of Tibetans inside Tibet. Secretary Dadun Sharling said,
DIR now has a very clear 5-year strategic plan to leverage the UN mechanisms to effectively engage with UN members and special procedures and mandate holders to engage with China on the human rights situation inside Tibet, and most importantly to ensure that China is becoming a responsible member of the UN Human Rights Council with the sense of ownership and self-accountability.
That is all for the week. We'll be back with more news next Friday. Have a good weekend.